Alright, let's get stuck into the next stage of the build. We're starting things off by installing the rear spring. Now it's still loose in the top mount at this point on purpose. That'll be properly fixed later on when we need to fine tune the rear ride height. It's one of those things that has to wait until more of the car is together and the weight can be taken into account. Next up, we got the drive shaft in on the driver's side. That was torqued down to spec, following the figures straight from the official Ford manual. I also went a bit heavy on the Loctite, probably more than necessary, but I really wanted to make sure those 4 bolts stay put. Losing a drive shaft bolt at speed isn't on my to-do list. Here you can get a clear look at the contrast between the untouched side and the side we've rebuilt. It's always satisfying to see the before and after right next to each other. With that done, we moved over to the passenger side and pulled the drive shaft out. That's ready for cleanup and restoration, same process as before. Then it felt like a good moment to measure up the floor strengthening plate. We positioned it under the car, carefully balancing it on jacks and stands, and checked how it lined up with the existing chassis. There's always some fiddling involved at this stage to make sure everything's aligned nicely. Right. Once we were happy with the position, we drilled pilot holes straight through the floor and subframe and into the strengthening plate itself. These are the primary mounting points into the chassis. We'll add more fixings into the original floor structure later on for extra rigidity. After taking the plate out and putting it up on the bench, we enlarged the pilot holes to suit the bolts we'd selected for the job. I found it's always best to drill the final size off the car where you can, much easier. Then we noticed that the floor mounting holes for the handbrake adjusters were too small. Out came the rotary tool to open them up until everything fitted. We discovered that the main cutout for the handbrake lever itself was slightly off. Luckily, we'd already marked out the correct position while the plate was still under the car. So it was just a matter of cutting along our marks. We started with a rotary tool again, but it was a bit slow going, so we switched to a hacksaw and made quicker progress.
I didn't know what it was.
Sideways. Sideways.
Right.
The handbrake assembly bolts into place through both the floor and the strengthening plate. The lever itself pokes through the new cutout and sits at the correct angle so that the cable runs cleanly back to the brakes.
You are? Yeah. That's it. Excellent job.
Before those adjustments done, we test fitted the plate. This was a bit of a mission as it's heavy and awkward to manoeuvre into place, but we got it in. And then we checked the handbrake position, everything lined up as planned.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Probably haven't got the air brake in yet.
Yeah, but I need to operate it then. Yeah, that's it. back the other way?
Hang on. Can you get a bit more on that one or not?
On what one?
How far through is that bolt?
Well, they're nylon. Right?
Oh, are they? Okay. Right.
Back to the passenger side drive shaft, it needed the same de-rusting treatment as the driver side. The wire wheel made quick work of that job, and soon enough it was looking fresh again. Taking a step back for a progress check, most of the subframe has now been sanded and given a protective coat of paint. With hardly any body panels installed yet, it's easy to see the bare structure and how the gearbox and engine slot into position. It's starting to look like a car again. So here's the current project. I guess the clutter makes it difficult to see, but essentially I stripped it apart to paint the frame. This is the rear left that I'm currently working on. The other side is mostly back together again. And this was all as rusty as the spare axles there, so they've been painted up. Protective coating on the metal at the moment. Once that's off, it'll just be shiny like this. So it's a reconditioned drive shaft. Got to change the boots on this, and that's ready to go back on. The back plate for the rear brake. Gearbox, engine. Steering wheel. And up here as well, we're storing the bonnet, because I'm running out of space. There's the fuel tank. Needs to go in there somewhere. Now, replacing the rubber boots on the drive shaft is one of those fiddly jobs. The old ones are cut off right before the new ones are sealed into place. The new ones are stretched into place using a special installation cone. First you turn the boot inside out and slide it onto the cone. You place the cone over the end of the drive shaft and push the boot over it. And let me tell you, this is harder than it sounds. The rubber isn't all that stretchy, and it takes some serious force to get it over. Turning it inside out means you are pulling on the larger end of the boot, which makes flipping it into position much easier. Once reversed, it naturally points the right way and sits nicely. Of course, you get to do it all over again with the second boot. It doesn't get much easier the second time, but persistence wins here. Reversing the boot back from inside out is tricky too, but again, slow and steady gets it done. With the boots in place, we installed the first clip to seal the small end, packed in plenty of grease to keep everything lubricated, then added the second clip to seal it all up. That keeps the CV joint protected from water and road grime.
I don't think so, but I'm not sure on that one, to be honest. Same again. I watched the video on how to do this, and I did my one on the Saxo, and they've got like a pair of those that are like up here. It's like.
Once that was sorted, the shaft was reinstalled and torqued up just like we did with the driver's side. Next on the list is brakes. We started with the brand new brake cylinder. The ones on the car were likely new when it was stripped down from the donor vehicle, but after sitting around for years, it made sense to just replace them. All the brake components going in are new to avoid any issues with the old components. Everything went together smoothly, except that pesky little spring clip. That thing had a mind of its own and shot across the garage more than once before finally cooperating. Once both rear brakes were in place, we could measure up the handbrake cable. It had to be cut to length based on the handbrake lever's final position. The end was then soldered on, starting with tinning the cable, then heating the metal end and flowing in the solder. And just to be extra sure it stays put, I gave it a light crimp with a hammer for some added mechanical grip.
Hold it up a bit. Just run right through. Right. Just hit it gently to start with.
With the rear brakes wrapped up, attention turned to the front calipers. They got a thorough clean with brake cleaner, then coated in rust converter to keep the corrosion at bay. After that, they got a fresh coat of red paint to match the rear drums and add a bit of colour behind the wheels. For the brake lines, I ran all new copper pipe throughout the system. Learning how to get the correct flare on the ends of the pipe was a bit of a learning curve, but after a bunch of practice runs, I was confident enough to tackle the actual lines for the car. The pipes follow the original routing from the wheels to the centre of the subframe. Here it meets a T-piece at the rear of the car, where the lines merge into one that connect it to the front master cylinder. That lets a single line from the front master cylinder split into two for the two rear brakes. Simple and effective. To keep everything secure, rubber-coated clips were used to hold the lines in place. These were riveted into freshly drilled holes in the subframe, giving a clean and tidy finish. Thanks for watching.